Virgo. Welcome to Pandora Astrology's monthly horoscope for June of 2022. We are the astrologers of Pandora Astrology. I'm Jamie Kale Miller. I'm in Berkeley, California.
And I'm Julia Mijas in Pioneer, California.
Well, Virgo, this month's horoscope focuses on career and networking. If this horoscope leaves you with questions about how to grow your career or your social media network or presence, a Mission Orders career reading can answer your questions. You'll find a link for that in the YouTube description below. Well, I want to tell you actually about the movements of some slower moving planets right now, beginning with Saturn, which is traveling along through your sixth house of work, health, and service. Saturn usually spends about 2.5 years passing through any given house. And we can't know exactly when this began and when it finishes without a look at your own personal chart, which is different from your horoscope. It's much more precise than your horoscope ever could be. But I do want to tell you how this feels so that you can identify whether this is happening for you and know a little something about how to respond to it. Saturn brings the need for discipline and structure wherever it goes. Saturn presses us to face our limitations and constrictions and to work hard to achieve. And in the sixth house, this can really show up for you in the workplace. You may feel like you're under pressure to get more organized at work or at home, just basically to get better systems in place so that both of those areas run more smoothly. You may feel like you're under the gun and that people are noticing your competency or lack of it in the workplace. And now is a really good time for you to put in the effort so that you can achieve and then ultimately get the reward for the increase in your excellence that you can create during this time period. That's really the best use of Saturn passing along through your sixth house. Now, the other planet I want to tell you about is Neptune, which is passing through your seventh house in an even longer time period than Saturn is. It usually takes Neptune about 14 years on average to travel along a house. This is the house of relationships and partnerships of all kinds, whether at work or in your personal life. Neptune is the dreamer and artist, the visionary, imaginative, spiritual, compassionate, and empathic side of us. So Neptune tends to blur the boundaries wherever she goes. In the seventh house, this can bring you lots of dreams, fantasies, and imaginings about the relationship that you might be in, which might make the relationship that you are in look pretty disappointing. And so during this transit, it's really, really important to not get sort of led down the garden path towards a partner who seems ideal, like a soulmate, but who ultimately is like, that person you put on a pedestal, but the brilliant, gleaming marble statue turns out to have clay feet. So Neptune has you on a 14-year journey to discover what your ideals and vision of relationship is, and to bring relationship into your alignment with your spiritual value system. So this is about not finding a soul mate, which will, who will solve all your relationship problems after that first kiss for the rest of your life, but instead to engage in the process of soul mating by bringing your soul together with the soul of another person and doing the actual work of relationship. So, like I said before, we can't know exactly when this process began without a look at your own actual chart. And you can always find Julia and I at pandoraastrology.com in the readings tab if you want a reading to find out those dates. So I do want to just throw one other little thing at you, which is that Jupiter has just in last month moved into your eighth house and is bringing luck and opportunity to the arena of sharing, which means that this year might be a really good year for you to engage in good debt that can advance you in the future, because you have luck around that sort of thing and also around intimate relationships right now. And if you want to find out more about that, check your May 2022 horoscope, because that's where I talked about that in more depth. And there's also a video about Jupiter in Aries in our May news playlist. Hey, Julia, you want to take it away with your discussion of Mercury, Venus, and Mars?
Absolutely. Hey there, Virgo. Let's talk about Mercury because Mercury is your ruling planet. And Mercury starts the month retrograde. It does go direct early on in the month on June 3rd. So the retrograde cycle, which lasts about 3 weeks, mainly took place last month. So if you do want to hear more about that, please check out our last month's video where we really covered that in a lot of depth. But Mercury has been retrograde in your ninth house, and that's the house of education. That's the house of travel. It's also the house of beliefs. You know, your religious beliefs can be ruled by the ninth too, as well as legal matters. So for the last few weeks, you may have had been going through a series of review and redo in all ninth house things. So if you're in school, maybe you have to go back and learn or rewrite some paper, or something maybe that you thought you had grasped, you really need to relearn again. If you've been traveling or planning any travel, you may have run into a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of sort of problems along the way, because Mercury retrograde is usually a time when there are a lot of delays and things can hit us when we're traveling, whether by air, train, or automobile. And the ninth house does rule legal matters. So if you're involved in some kind of legal matter, or if you need to sign a contract, which I would suggest do it maybe even a week after June 3rd to make sure that you're in the out of the shadow period of Mercury, some squirreliness might be coming up too in those matters that require you to have to review and re-go over them again. Now, after June 3rd, when Mercury goes direct, and then after June 13th, Mercury is going to enter your 10th house of career. The 10th house also rules authority figures in your life. So that means anybody who tells you what to do. That can be a teacher, that can be a parent, a boss, or if you're running your own business, maybe it's a government official. But anyway, Mercury in the 10th house is a time when we're usually very preoccupied by our work, our career, our life direction. If you're looking for a new career or applying to jobs, Mercury in the 10th can be a great time to work on your resume, update your CV, maybe reach out to people for some references. And if you're in a career, Mercury in the 10th means that your mind is really, really going to be focused on it. And if you do anything Mercury related for your career, that could be writing, teaching, speaking, buying, selling, travel, then this can be definitely a fruitful time. And you also might notice an increased communication, perhaps with your parents or other authority figures in your life. Then Venus, everybody's favorite, because she's the planet of love, beauty, harmony. She's known as a benefic. Wherever she goes, she tends to bring a little bit of pleasure with her. And who doesn't like that? So Venus spends about the first 3 weeks up until June 22nd in your ninth house. And again, the ninth house is the house of travel, education, expansion. It can represent beliefs too. Venus in the ninth house can be an enjoyable time for a pleasure trip. If you're single, Venus in the ninth house can sometimes get a little holiday romance, or even a crush on somebody who comes from a very, very different background than you. And it's almost like that difference is what really, really draws you to the person, maybe a foreigner, maybe somebody from a different ethnicity or religion. Venus in the ninth house can really love to learn too. Going to a workshop or watching a TED Talk, it's just kind of like learning and expanding can just be a really, really wonderful source of pleasure for you this month. Then by June 22nd, Venus is going to enter your 10th house. She's about 5 days behind Mercury, which is up in there. And Venus in the 10th house is a great time for getting along well with authority figures. So especially if you need to ask for any favors from somebody who tells you what to do, then that can be a really good time for it. Venus in the 10th adds a little bit of luck and magic to your public image. The 10th house is the most public house. It represents your reputation. So especially if you do anything in the public eye, this is going to add a little bit more beauty, grace, charm, diplomacy to how you sort of present yourself publicly, which can be very, very useful. And if you're in a relationship, the 10th house being such a public house, this could be a time where you want to make your relationship a little bit more public, whether that's kind of, for example, if you just started dating somebody, announcing to other people, this is my boyfriend and girlfriend, maybe the relationship becomes a little bit more public in some way. And then finally, I always have to say a few things about Mars. Mars is a totally different vibe than Venus. Venus is all cute and pretty and squishy, but Mars is a lot more feisty. It's a planet of action and activity, and wherever we have Mars, we can be very, very driven in our lives, as well as where we can have a big arena of activity too for the month. So Mars is going to be in your 8th house all month. The 8th house is a financial house. It represents the money you share with those close to you or money you share with institutions like banks. So Mars in the 8th can be a time where we're very sort of driven financially, maybe driven to acquire more money, either through investments, inheritances. However, since Mars is a little bit tricky, it's not necessarily the best time to apply for a loan. And it might also get you really annoyed if you don't get it too, because Mars can be super feisty. And there is also some caution of maybe running into disagreements over money too. Now, Mars in the 8th, since the 8th is a house of research, a house of investigation, it's really about plumbing the depths to kind of find something underneath the surface. This can be a good time to get a lot of research done, to really investigate something in your life as well too, which can be productive if you need to do so either at school or work or even in your personal life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to tell you about the 2 moons of the month and the seasonal shift, beginning with the full moon in Sagittarius right here in your 4th house, opposite the sun in Gemini in your 10th house. And this is part of the emphasis on career that's going on in your horoscope as the sun moves along through the 10th house of career. And then when the moon comes opposed it, sometimes emotions will be running high during a full moon. And this particular axis, being the axis of career or outer life versus home or inner life, could bring up some conflicts and strong emotions involving your work-life balance. And so you may feel like you just want to curl up at home and be soothed in your home space, in your nest, but also a lot of your energy and attention is being pulled into career, and that can be challenging to find ways to balance that. So the full moon is going to bring up those sorts of things. There's also a square to Neptune involved in this moon, which is going to muddy the waters and sort of make it harder to really understand what you feel or what your partner is trying to tell you about how they feel. And there is a solution, though, ready built into this moon, which is the trine to Saturn. And so we're calling this moon avoid delusion, head for intellectual solid ground, because this the Neptune passage along the 7th house has sort of made you a little bit prone to shall we say, like delusion or illusion in relationships in general. And this moon can really bring that up and make it more emotional. But Saturn brings in a very grounded and rational influence that can help you to extricate yourself from the confusion. Then the next thing I want to tell you about is that the sun is going to be leaving the 10th house and moving into the 11th house. And so the energy begins to shift from career and its themes, 10th house, to the 11th house themes of community and networks. The 11th house is a house of groups and tribe. It pertains to the groups of people that you spend your time with socially for fun because you want to, your friendships and so forth. But also it's the groups of people that you might gather around you in your work life or through a business. And so this is a house of social media and social media marketing. And as the sun moves there, it's a really good idea to bring the sunlight of your high quality attention to this area so that things can thrive and be nourished by that sunlight. So as the sun moves into the 11th house, it will be spending 30 days there, beginning around June 21st as it enters the sign of Cancer. And this is a really good time to be growing your social media presence and yourself as a person of interest there, whether that's for work reasons or personal ones. So then a couple of days after that, you'll see that the moon is traveling around the wheel and joins the sun here in the 11th house for a new moon. New moons are great times for new beginnings. And in this case, because it lands in the 11th house with the sun, the seeds that you can plant should be social ones. They should be seeds of new relationships, new acquaintances, new connections, additions to your contacts or your Rolodex that will flourish and grow into something bigger in the future. If you want to find out more about either of these moons, you can find that out on our YouTube channel, Pandora Astrology, in the June 2022 news playlist, or on our monthly forecast page for June, which is at our website, pandoraastrology.com. You can also find out a lot more in the other horoscope. If Virgo is your sun sign, then you should absolutely look up your rising sign horoscope too, because it'll work much better. And if this horoscope interests you to get a reading, you should check out the readings tab on our website. And until next time, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye-bye.
Bye.